The passport was from a country called Taured. The problem? Taured didn't exist. Airport officials assumed it was a mistake. Officials, baffled and suspicious, placed him under guard at a nearby hotel while they investigated. The next morning, the mystery deepened. The man from Taured had vanished from his locked hotel room, despite guards outside the door.
In 1954, a man stepped off a plane in Tokyo and triggered a mystery that would remain buried for decades. He looked ordinary, well-dressed, polite, fluent in several languages, but what he carried would shake the confidence of even the most seasoned officials. His documents were perfect, his answers convincing. Yet everything about him pointed to a place that didn't exist, a missing dot on the map, a name no history book had ever written. What began as a strange border check spiraled into something far more disturbing, something that left no trace, no explanation, and no one willing to talk about it afterward. Why were witnesses quietly reassigned? And more importantly, what did they discover that night behind a locked door that convinced them the world wasn't what we thought it was? The arrival that defied reality. It was a sweltering day in July 1954, when what should have been a routine customs screening at Tokyo's Haneda airport unraveled into one of the most baffling events in modern history. A sharply dressed European-looking man stepped off a plane and approached immigration, presenting a well-worn black briefcase and a confident demeanor. He spoke fluent Japanese and French, appeared calm and professional, and claimed to be in Japan on business. When he handed over his passport, officials expected nothing more than a standard inspection. Instead, they were confronted with a document listing Taured as the country of origin, a nation no one had ever heard of, and one that didn't appear on any known map. At first, customs agents assumed it was a simple error, a misprint, a translation issue, or a misunderstanding. But the man seemed genuinely confused by their reaction. Without hesitation, he insisted that Taured was a real country with a long history, even pointing to a map of the region between France and Spain. To the officials' astonishment, he dismissed the Principality of Andorra as incorrect, claiming Taured had existed in that exact location for over 1,000 years. The man's conviction was unshakable, and his papers, visas, a driver's license, a checkbook, and business documents all consistently listed Taured as his homeland. Each item bore an official-looking insignia that no one could identify. The deeper they delved into Japanese immigration and airport security, the more puzzles they discovered instead of solutions. The passport looked immaculate under UV light, dotted with entries stamped from France, Spain, Germany, and even from Japan, in and out in the last 5 years. The style and date of each stamp matched historical customs data within known parameters, making forgery a rare occurrence. More telephone calls to the company he said he would be visiting in Tokyo confirmed its existence, but no one there knew of him. Inquiries to the phantom employer in Taured produced nothing. There was just no record of that company. Even the man remained calm, but increasingly confused, certain that he had traversed through Tokyo many times and had never had any problems. With no legal grounds to detain him, but too many inconsistencies not to, the authorities placed the man under temporary watch in a nearby hotel, guarded around the clock. He was courteous and cooperative, even saying he was confident that the entire matter would be resolved the following day. That following day, however, never came. Somehow, come morning, the man had disappeared from his locked and guarded room, along with everything he had brought with him. There were no signs of escape, no broken locks or forced exits, and nobody in an otherwise busy Tokyo saw anyone leaving. A mystery that began as a mere anomaly now chilled, posing a nightmare question. If somebody could slip through from another reality, what else could? But it wasn't just the man that raised eyebrows. What he carried was even harder to explain. Documents from nowhere. As immigration officials at Haneda Airport examined the man's passport, their initial suspicion quickly turned to disbelief. The document appeared indistinguishable from any legitimate European-issued passport of the time, made from the correct materials, featuring standard watermarks, seals, and stamps. Under ultraviolet light, it showed no signs of tampering or forgery. What made the situation surreal was that the passport listed Taured as the issuing country, a nation that simply did not exist on any contemporary political map or in any recognized historical record. Yet everything about the passport, from typography to formatting, matched real-world standards used in European travel documents of the 1950s. The deeper the authorities dug, the stranger things became. The man's passport was filled with visa stamps from France, Spain, Germany, and even 2 previous entries into Japan in over the past 5 years. Each stamp matched the design and date formatting used by customs agencies at the time. Forgery experts were brought in to assess the document, and one by one, they confirmed its authenticity. It wasn't just the passport. The man also carried a driver's license, a checkbook, and multiple business documents, all identifying it as his country of origin. These items, too, were crafted with startling precision. Even the checkbook used paper, ink, and formatting consistent with contemporary European banks. Adding to the mystique, the man's wallet was filled with European currencies, including French francs, Spanish pesetas, and German marks, all of which were still in circulation and confirmed genuine at that time. His business card bore immaculate Japanese writing and corresponded to an actual company in Tokyo. However, there was none listed by that name in the records of the company when contacted by officials. Similarly, the alleged employer listed in Taured was verified, but it did not exist either. Such inconsistencies made it increasingly difficult to write off the case as fraud or delusion. Each item was totally internally consistent and believable. Indeed, in many ways, impossible to fake with the precision he demonstrated. What puzzled investigators tremendously was not the existence of the documents alone, but how well they agreed with known standards, including the most minute legal notations and even regional spelling conventions. If the man were to be labeled a forger, he would need to have been the most successful one in history, as his documents related to institutions that had not even been created, all under real-world bureaucratic logic. It became clearer that there was an accumulation of credible but untraceable documents. This man was either the most talented con man the world had ever produced, or a real citizen of a place completely outside all the usual official measures of existence. A map that doesn't match. As Japanese officials continued questioning the mysterious traveler, they pressed him to clarify the location of his alleged homeland. Without hesitation, the man confidently pointed to a map of Europe and indicated the small area nestled between France and Spain. But instead of acknowledging the known Principality of Andorra, he became visibly confused and even agitated, insisting that the region was home to a country called Taured, a nation he claimed had existed for over 1,000 years. His certainty was unshakable, and he seemed genuinely perplexed that those questioning him had never heard of it. The man spoke with the composure and familiarity of someone who had traveled internationally many times before. When officials suggested he might be referring to Andorra, or that he was mistaken, he firmly rejected the idea. He maintained that Taured had a long and proud history, complete with its own government, economy, and international relations. His conviction was unsettling, not the posture of a con artist improvising a lie, but of someone whose version of reality simply did not align with the world around him. This discrepancy between geography as we know it and his unwavering account deepened the mystery. Authorities began weighing whether this constituted a case of mental illness or a delusion. A medical expert was secretly called in to ascertain the state of the man's psychology. The only complication the results brought: he was found perfectly sane, coherent, and not toxicated or drunk. He spoke rationally, detailed his travels, business engagements, and life history. His confidence in Taured's existence never faltered, even when confronted by physical maps and international registries that failed to acknowledge the nation he described in such rich detail. What upset investigators most was the man's emotional response. He was not defensive, evasive, but frustrated and increasingly disoriented. as if he were the one caught within a mistaken version of reality. His insistence that Taured belonged to a space already occupied by one such nation means either dramatic cognitive dissonance and possibly something more extraordinary, or worse. If his claims were false, his conviction was unnerving. But if true, they indicated some deeper fissure in the world, as we believe it to be a generally shared, objective world map, suggesting the horrifying possibility that he wasn't wrong at all, just from somewhere else. The man without a past. Though the man from Taured carried himself with the confidence of a seasoned international traveler, every attempt to verify his background led to a dead end. He claimed to work for a multinational company based in Taured, with clients and branches across Europe, and he said his current visit to Japan was for business with a Tokyo-based firm. At first, these details lent credibility to his story, until investigators contacted the companies he named. The Tokyo firm did exist, but no one there had ever heard of the man or was expecting him. Even more troubling, the employer he named in Taured could not be found in any business registry, either in Japan or internationally. Immigration officers began checking with consulates, embassies, and global databases. They searched missing persons reports and tried matching his identity with foreign intelligence records. Nothing came up. His name, as well as the names of the institutions listed on his documents, had no digital or paper trail. This was despite the fact that his materials looked entirely genuine and detailed, consistent with international travel norms and corporate correspondence. His business cards were professionally printed in flawless Japanese. His checkbook matched the formatting used by European banks, and yet not a single entity could confirm his existence. To eliminate impersonation, detectives took his fingerprints and handwriting samples, yet again, with negative results. His prints had not been in any criminal or immigration databases. These were described as steady and deliberate, indicative of calmness rather than nervous deception. He did not appear to be somebody on the run from the law or fleeing his past, but rather somebody whose past, in this world, seemed not to exist at all. For every answer he mustered, more questions would arise within the investigation. His appeal was further puzzling. Throughout this whole ordeal, the man appeared more confused, not so much with the formal scrutiny, but with the disbelief surrounding his identity. He reiterated that he had passed through Tokyo many times before without any issue, and appeared to be genuinely shaken that this time was different. To the investigator, his reactions did not fit the mold of a hoaxer or spy. He was calm and articulate, and his claims were entirely consistent. But as each contact and reference point failed to produce any results, it was clear the man had arrived with a complete set of credentials and memories about which there was every evidence, but no verifiable history to attach him to our world. Held under guard, faced with a traveler whose documents were authentic yet untraceable, and whose identity could not be verified by any known records, Japanese immigration officials found themselves in an unprecedented situation. The man from Taured had committed no crime. His paperwork was technically in order, and he had not violated any laws. But his existence presented a logical paradox. Unable to clear him for entry or deport him to a country that didn't exist, authorities made the cautious decision to temporarily detain him. He was placed under guard in a secure hotel room near Haneda Airport, while further inquiries were conducted. Security measures were strict. 2 guards were stationed outside his room at all times, and a third monitored the hallway's only entrance. The hotel was specifically chosen for its lack of balconies or exterior escape routes, and the windows in the man's room were sealed. Officials were determined to keep the situation contained, believing they had more time to resolve the inconsistencies in his story. Despite the growing tension, the man remained cooperative. He ate the meal brought to him, thanked the hotel staff politely, and maintained that the misunderstanding would be sorted out by morning. As the evening progressed, officials observed that the man appeared more fatigued than worried. According to reports, he reassured one immigration officer with the subtle hint of a smile, saying, "It will all be sorted out by tomorrow," as if he still believed that all would be set right. His medical evaluation continued to show no evidence of mental instability. He was neither panicky nor hostile, nor evasive. Rather, he seemed quietly incredulous at the fact that anyone could disbelieve in a nation he had called home all his life. Investigators were now confident in their observations that this man's calm demeanor seemed to flutter sharply against the backdrop of such extraordinary events unfolding around him. Unbeknownst to the guards and to the authorities, keeping the man in detention was only the start to an even greater puzzle. Apparently, the man was in full view of the guards, who never abandoned their vigilance. But as it so transpired, the following morning, when they came to bring him out, his cell was devoid of him. After an exhaustive investigation, no signs of escape from his side could be detected. The door had remained locked from the inside, while all of his possessions, passport, checkbook, currencies, and business documents had presumably disappeared along with him. What had once started as a mystery involving bureaucratic wrangling had now morphed into a matter that challenged not just bureaucratic proceedings, but the nature of reality itself. But as night fell, something far stranger than paperwork began to unravel. The impossible disappearance. By the following morning, the mystery of the Man from Taured had taken an even more unsettling turn. When immigration officials arrived at the hotel to resume questioning, they were met with a scene that defied logic. The room was empty. The bed had clearly been slept in, the bathroom used, but the man himself and all of his belongings had vanished without a trace. His passport, currencies, business cards, checkbook, and identification documents were all gone. Even the room's furnishings remained undisturbed, with no sign of a struggle or any attempt at forced entry or exit. What made the disappearance truly inexplicable was the level of security surrounding him. 2 guards had been stationed outside his door all night, and a 3rd officer was monitoring the only hallway entrance. No unusual sounds or disturbances were reported, and the guards swore they had never left their posts. The hotel room had no balcony, no external fire escape, and all windows were sealed shut. The door remained locked from the inside, and there were no security breaches recorded at any time during the night. Surveillance of the hotel's main entrance showed no one matching his description leaving the building. Law enforcement promptly initiated an all-out search of the hotel and its surrounding landscape. Police combed bus and train stations, with the airport terminals being alerted and roadblocks placed throughout Tokyo. No sightings, no witnesses to see him leave, and no physical evidence of his having ever been there. The matter quickly escalated from being merely a case of lost paperwork into a puzzle beyond resolution. Closed-door panic began to spread, as persons from inside the incident realized slowly dawned upon them that it had wandered far away from customary procedure or rational explanation. Internal reports described the incident behind the scenes as deeply troubling and without precedent. Some of the personnel involved started to report odd sensations they experienced that night, including malfunctioning electronics, static on the radio, and ghostly flickers of lights in the hotel hallway. At the time, these instances were dismissed as probably stress-induced or mere coincidence. In retrospect, however, they elicited a much darker undertone, suggesting that a disappearance may not be an example of clever escape, but an example of being vanished from our very own reality. As it happened, from then on, the case was not to be looked into as an immigration issue, but as an incomprehensible anomaly, perhaps something never supposed to be understood at all. Reality distorted. In the hours surrounding the mysterious disappearance of the Man from Taured, multiple witnesses began reporting unusual and unsettling phenomena within the hotel. Guards stationed outside his room claimed the night had been uneventful. Yet later, under confidential interviews, some admitted experiencing subtle but strange sensations they couldn't explain. One officer described a persistent feeling of disorientation, as if something was off, though he couldn't articulate why. Others noted unexplained flickers in the hallway lights and brief bursts of static on their handheld radios, malfunctions that had no technical justification and hadn't occurred before or after the incident. Initially, these anomalies were brushed aside as byproducts of stress. After all, the personnel were involved in a bizarre case. A man with perfect documentation from a country that didn't exist now vanished without a trace from a sealed room. But as more reports surfaced, each echoing similar oddities, investigators could no longer ignore the growing pattern. Hotel staff later recalled feeling an inexplicable heaviness or electrical pressure in the air, a sensation some likened to standing near a live current. At the time, these experiences were undocumented, dismissed as coincidence or fatigue. Yet, in hindsight, they seemed to align with something far stranger. Internal memos, which leaked out years later, confirmed that Japanese authorities actually had the option of environmental disruptions during the man's detention. One such classified file referred to temporary spatial anomalies, plus brief but measurable fluctuations of electromagnetic records registered at the hotel during the night. Internally, while never published, it held a hint of implication much beyond conventional explanation, that the man may have been present and later disappeared just after or during a rupture in the usual fabric of physical space. The spookiest theory, whispered in select government and intelligence circles, was that reality itself had been compromised. Disorientation with electrical disturbances, plus complete obliteration of the man from the physical world, suggested that this wasn't an escape but a collapse between dimensions for a brief moment. If this is true, that meant Haneda Airport wasn't just a mysterious or unsolved disappearance. It was an event that momentarily breached the worlds, allowing a man who did not belong here to slip through and vanish without a trace. The official cover-up. In the wake of the man's disappearance, Japanese authorities moved quickly and decisively to contain the situation. Within hours of discovering the empty hotel room, immigration officials and police launched an internal review, one that never saw the light of day. Despite the unprecedented nature of the case, no missing person report was ever filed, and no official bulletin was released to the public. The absence of any criminal activity gave authorities a loophole to avoid formal reporting. Instead of treating the incident as an open investigation, it was swiftly reclassified under national security provisions, effectively sealing it from public and press scrutiny. Staff members who had interacted with the man, from immigration officers to hotel personnel, were quietly rotated out of their posts. Some were reassigned to other cities, while others were instructed to remain silent under confidentiality agreements. A few later claimed, under anonymity, that they were explicitly told to forget what they had seen. Files related to the incident were locked away, stamped with high-level clearance labels, and stored in restricted archives within the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Even internal memos avoided referring to the man by name, instead using vague phrases like anomalous foreign national or subject of unresolved origin. This hasty and fervent act of taking down information was only a self-determined bureaucratic option. It seemed to be a concerted effort to erase the incident from memory. Decades later, leaked documents revealed the intelligence agencies had been involved with at least one unnamed foreign service. These communications referenced the incident in cold, clinical terms, noting that the subject and all materials have ceased to exist within standard physical parameters. In other words, they acknowledged both the man's physical presence and his equally mysterious non-existence, but chose to suppress the implications for fear of what that could suggest about the stability of reality itself. Hence, officially, the Man From Taured never existed. There was no paper trail, no media coverage, and no public rationale for the event. For the few who had known the real truth, it was all sealed under oath. The case has been buried so deeply it could only survive through rumors and whispered stories shared in quiet corners of academia, government, and conspiracy forums. But silence does not erase suspicion. Those who had seen the original documents or had witnessed the man themselves could not deny the truth, and to the point, terrifying. They knew there had to be something strange about Haneda Airport. Something that had happened to the world that forcibly turned it aside from ever so discreetly asking why. Leaked files and alternate realities. For decades, the story of the Man From Taured existed only as a whispered anomaly, circulating among airport staff, conspiracy theorists, and fringe researchers. That changed when a series of leaked documents, reportedly originating from within the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, surfaced and offered chilling confirmation that the incident had, in fact, taken place. One of the most revealing files referred to the case as an encounter with an unrecognized national entity and included detailed customs reports that matched the original claims. A European-looking man had arrived at Haneda airport carrying legitimate documents from a country no government recognized. These classified reports didn't just recount the man's baffling background, they also described what followed. An internal memorandum marked "Eyes Only" referenced a meeting between Japanese officials and an unnamed foreign intelligence service. The summary of that meeting used stark, unsettling language. Anomalous traveler incident confirmed. Subject and associated materials have ceased to exist within standard physical parameters. Recommend further study. The implication was clear. Not only had the man from Taured been real, but his disappearance was recognized at the highest levels as something beyond natural explanation. One of the most shocking revelations was a set of documents suggesting that Japanese authorities had quietly consulted university-affiliated scientists after the incident. According to the files, these researchers concluded that the incident might bear witness to localized dimensional instability, a brief rift between parallel realities. One technical report characterized the anomaly as transient but measurable and warned that events like these, though rare, may not be singular. If this is indeed true, a man from Taured was not a fraud or a hoax, but an unintended traveler across a collapsing boundary between worlds who had somehow slipped through a crack in the fabric of existence. Further corroboration for this theory was building by references to strange electromagnetic fluctuations that were recorded at the airport at the time of the abduction of the man. These disturbances could not be ascribed to environmental or mechanical aspects and were congruent with those anomalous events reported by the guards at the hotel the night he disappeared. This evidence paints a very dark picture indeed, beyond that of a mere bureaucratic enigma. The man from Taured may have come from an alternate reality parallel to ours, where history, geography, and national boundaries are just slightly different. And when the window between those dimensions closed, it didn't just wipe him from this world, it may have left a scar across the invisible framework of our own. Just when officials thought it was over, echoes of the impossible started appearing elsewhere. Wider implications and lingering threats. The disappearance of the man from Taured might have remained an isolated curiosity, an unsolved puzzle relegated to obscure forums and late-night speculation, if not for what followed in the years after. Reports began to trickle in from around the world, describing similar incidents, individuals arriving at airports or train stations with perfectly valid documents from countries that didn't exist, or people who spoke fluent languages no one could identify. Maps surfaced with unfamiliar borders. Travelers vanished under unexplained circumstances. These scattered anomalies were often dismissed as hoaxes or misunderstandings, but for those familiar with the Haneda case, they were unmistakable echoes of a deeper, unresolved phenomenon. Some researchers and intelligence insiders began to suggest that the man from Taured had not been a random anomaly, but potentially the first known breach in a much larger pattern. Leaked scientific summaries from university-affiliated physicists described the 1954 event as a microfracture in dimensional boundaries, possibly the result of a naturally occurring rupture or, more ominously, an artificially triggered one. While no definitive cause was ever identified, the possibility that such rifts could occur spontaneously and unpredictably raised serious concerns. If one traveler could accidentally slip through from another world, what was to stop a larger breach from affecting ours more dramatically? In this regard, malfunctions that could not be explained and sensations that seemed to defy explanation were more frequently reported than before, and developed many occurrences that jointly rather captivated the empathies of the Taured scenario. These included electrical disturbances, radio interference, and, most humorously, a sense of unease harbored by all who were present during the event. The officials implied as much later, both in their private writings and in interviews, that they believed reality had actually been destabilized for a moment. An internal memorandum actually warned that if the dimensional stress continues, it may increase the possibility of events recurring. Some even speculated the Man from Taured was a scout, a symptom of a multidimensional leak which could not be fully contained. To this day, no government has gone public with the Taured implications, but the fear it instilled never seemed to quite recede. Behind closed doors, researchers and intelligence operatives still actively track unexplained disappearances, implications of memory shifts, and geographic markers for the impossible. As for the question, was the Man from Taured just misplaced? Or was he the very first tangible evidence that our reality is much more fragile, more permeable than we have ever thought? A few scientists now quietly admit that it happened once. They go so far as to say it could happen again, and next time, it may not be just one man crossing over. According to some theorists, situating the Mandela effect on more widespread cultural and scientific grounds serves to strengthen claims for the Taured. Such broad-scale collective memory mismatch, an instance of contrasting remembrance of historical events by large numbers from the official historical record, has been interpreted by some researchers as signs of possible overlapping timelines or dimensional bleed-throughs. A physicist at a private research institute in Kyoto, Dr. Yuki Nakamura, wrote in a restricted paper in 1998, "Localized reality shifts may not always be dramatic. They may manifest subtly through inconsistencies in perception, memory, or geography." While most scientists remain reticent, fringe communities tie these phenomena into the Haneda incident, seeing it as the first public crack in an otherwise concealed fault line between worlds. Thanks for watching. If this story left you with more questions than answers, you're not alone. What do you think happened to the Man from Taured? Drop your theories in the comments. We'd love to hear them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a mystery. And if you're ready to dive deeper into the strange and unexplained, watch the next video now. It's right here on your screen.